Good afternoon. I have just returned from Buckingham Palace, where I accepted an invitation from His Majesty the King to form the next government of this great nation.
Hi, welcome back to Joe Blogs. In this episode, I want to talk to you about what's going on in the United Kingdom, because the UK has yet another new Prime Minister. And this is the fifth Prime Minister that the UK's had in the past 5 years. And if you're not from the UK, here's a little challenge for you. Can you name those 5 Prime Ministers that have all been in power over the last 5 years? I'll come on to talk to you about that in a minute to see whether or not you can. But the reason why the UK has yet another new Prime Minister is because it's just held what it calls a general election. And the general election is similar to the US presidential election. It's held usually every 5 years. But the key difference to the one in the UK versus the US is that rather than voting for an individual, such as Joe Biden or Donald Trump, you vote for the party that those individuals represent. And the UK is split into 650 different areas. And each person in the UK goes and votes in their local area. And then somebody wins that local election. And whoever it is then made a member of parliament. So they go to the Houses of Parliament and vote on all of the things. And they put forward bills and all of that sort of thing. And out of the 650 MPs, they then do a count. And the party that has the most is the winner, and the leader of that party, who's an MP for one of those 650 different areas, then steps up and takes control of the country and becomes the Prime Minister, so the most important minister. And the new Prime Minister in the UK is a guy called KIER Starmer. Now, KIER Starmer is actually referred to as Sir KIER Starmer. He was knighted by the Queen back in 2014 for his services to the law industry, because KIER Starmer was previously a barrister. He studied law at Leeds University, then went on to Oxford University to do a postgraduate, and then became a barrister, which is basically one of those people who puts on a funny wig and a gown, goes into UK courts and either represents the person being accused of some sort of crime or the UK prosecution service who are actually trying to prosecute that person. And KIER Starmer was representing the people who were accused. So he was a defence barrister. And he made a ton of cash and then got knighted and decided that he wanted a new challenge. So in 2015, he became a member of parliament for the Labour Party. And the Labour Party is the left-wing party in the UK. So basically the more socialist version, the one that's looking after the rights of people who are less wealthy. And he was up against the Conservative Party that was most recently led by Rishi Sunak. And obviously I'm giving away some of the answers to the last 5 Prime Ministers here. And the Conservative Party is the more right-wing version. They look after the people who've got more money. So generally speaking, if you're wealthy, you vote for the Conservatives. If you're less wealthy, you tend to vote for Labour. But it's obviously not quite as clear-cut as that, so don't send me lots of comments below saying I support Labour and I'm really wealthy, or I support Conservatives and I'm not very wealthy. It doesn't really matter, nobody cares. The reason for this video is that I'm just trying to explain what's going on and why the UK is such a shambles in terms of its leadership. It hasn't had a consistent leader for a long period of time. In fact, since the Brexit vote came through, it's just had a constant change of leadership. So in this video, I just briefly wanted to say who the new leader is, why he's been appointed, and then to talk about what the potential implications of this change of power might be for the UK and the UK economy. Now, obviously, as it stands at the moment, nothing seismic has happened. There hasn't been a major crash in the financial markets. The UK pound hasn't collapsed. And the reason for that is that nobody's surprised by this change of government. The Conservative government that have been in power for the last 14 years have been in a state of chaos over the last few years, and the UK people have become very unhappy. So it was very clear that there was going to be a major victory for Labour, and that's actually what's happened. It's been a complete landslide, and the Conservatives have been completely wiped out. They've got the lowest number of seats that they've had for a very long time. And this graphic shows the breakdown of the seats won. You can see that Labour won 412 out of the 650 available, which was an increase of 211 seats. The Conservatives lost 250 and now only have 121 seats. The Liberal Democrats previously had only 8 seats and now have 71, so an increase of 63, which is absolutely massive for them. The Scottish National Party previously were dominant in Scotland. They had 47 seats. They lost 38 of those and so now only have 9, and the remaining parties won 35 seats between them. And the most significant of all of these was the Reform Party, which is newly created and led by Nigel Farage, who's a high-profile individual who previously led the Brexit campaign in the UK and was instrumental behind the UK voting to leave the European Union, who actually has never been a member of Parliament previously, but has now won his first seat. And he's come out today and said that he believes that Reform will overtake the Conservatives as the second largest party behind Labour. And this graphic shows how the UK has changed its voting over the past 7 years. On the far right-hand side here, you can see the breakdown of votes in 2017. The blue sections represent areas that voted Conservative, which were in power at that time. They had the most seats. And the red section, people who voted Labour. In 2019, when the previous leader, Jeremy Corbyn, was in charge of the Labour Party, the Conservatives won more seats. However, in 2024, you can see that vast swathes of the blue sections of the United Kingdom have now been replaced by the red for Labour. And what that means is that the new government being led by Sir Keir Starmer will be able to vote through basically anything that they want. So they can introduce any changes that they like. Now, over the longer term, we will probably see higher taxes in the UK because, as I mentioned, Labour tend to look after the lower earning members of society rather than the higher earners. And so we'll probably see a general increase in taxation, particularly for people who are higher earners. We may see more corporate taxation and we may see other things that are more favourable towards a more socialist leaning. However, it's unlikely that we'll see anything too dramatic happening in the short term because Keir Starmer is more of a middle ground Labour guy. So he's not an extremist, he's not wanting to do things that are going to radically change the UK economy. There will be some changes, and I'm sure it will become more expensive for a lot of people who are earning money. But it's unlikely that we'll see anything too radical happening in the short term. Now, over the next 2 to 3 years, things could develop. We could see things starting to change. But I don't think the UK economy is going to be drastically affected. This isn't a major surprise for anybody that's been following politics for the last 12 months or so. It was really a matter of when rather than if when we're talking about the change of government. Now, in terms of Brexit, which I think is an interesting topic, and a lot of people ask me about that, Keir Starmer was actually a supporter of remaining in the EU, so he wasn't a fan of Brexit. However, it's unlikely that he will try to change Brexit. I think we've gone past the point of no return on that from the UK's point of view. However, his appointment is seen as a positive step from the European Union because he's a different party. He wasn't involved in all of the Brexit negotiations and setting up all of those rules and regulations. So the EU is likely to welcome this change of government in the UK, and it could be that deals start to get done between the EU and the UK much quicker. It might be that the UK gets some preferable terms. So hopefully there will be some benefits from the UK's point of view of this change of government. But I just wanted to post this very short video, slightly different from my usual style, explaining to people who are not from the UK why we've got yet another change of Prime Minister. Did you get those previous 5? I'll give you a quick run through now. Keir Starmer is the new Prime Minister. Sorry, Sir Keir Starmer, to keep it above board. He replaces Rishi Sunak.
I've just been to Buckingham Palace and accepted His Majesty the King's invitation to form a government in his name.
He replaced somebody called Liz Truss.
Good afternoon. I have just accepted Her Majesty the Queen's kind invitation to form a new government.
Who was actually only in power for around 50 days, an absolute shambles. She replaced Boris Johnson.
I have just been to see Her Majesty the Queen, who has invited me to form a government, and I have accepted.
Who was actually voted out after a vote of no confidence, and he replaced Theresa May.
I have just been to Buckingham Palace, where Her Majesty the Queen has asked me to form a new government, and I accepted.
Who did some terrible robot dancing to try to improve her street cred and become cool with the kids, which didn't work. I don't actually think that was why she was booted out in the end, but it certainly didn't help. So hopefully you've enjoyed this slightly different version. If you did, then please give me a thumbs up. Thank you for watching this video all the way through to the end, and here's something to put a smile on your face.